Hey, SHMACKEMAGOB, look who I got back on the show on my channel, Mr. Martin Popoff. What an honor, man. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, how you doing, Ralph? This is going to be fun. I love educating you on bands. It's odd that you don't know this band that well, so this is going to be fun.
This is true. I'll give you my little history. It's a very small history. I did see Uriah Heep twice, and both times I saw him, they opened for Priest. The first time was in 1982, and honestly, it was the first time seeing Priest, so I was really there for them. But I admit, I thought they were good live, so then I went out and I bought the album that was new at the time. Was Abominog, which is very heralded. A lot of people. You might. I'm sure you love this as well.
Yep.
I was disappointed. I mean, also I was at that age where, if it ain't metal, it's crap, where I've changed since then. This is a very AOR album, but I was listening to it for this show, and some songs really did Too Scared to Run and Hot Persuasion. I really did like off this.
Yeah.
And then another one that I kept hearing people talk about was Magician's Birthday. And I found this at and I tried, Martin. And the last thing I have is called, I don't know if you know this one, it's called the Lansdome Tapes. Do you know this one?
Yep. Just a bunch of old rarities. Yep.
This is just rarities. So you just released a book, right? For Uriah, a picture book, more or less?
Yeah, what it is a visual biography, and with images. Kevin Julie, a good buddy of mine, helped me out on the images. So this is a big hardcover book. I've done a few of this series, 7 or 8 of these, but this is actually the biggest one. When I mail it, it's £5 worth of yummy Uriah Heep, and essentially it's a full color throughout book of pictures and memorabilia shots. But also a very detailed and complicated timeline of every single event in the band's history, including all the solo projects and side projects, and members in and out, members dying. There's been a lot of death in this band. Pretty complicated prehistory to the band. So yeah, this is the biggest one of these that I've done, and everything you want to know about Heep in terms of like an academic book, where the timeline is all there. And Kevin Julie and I have interviewed the band so many times that we keep threatening to do almost like a trilogy on the band, like my Rush trilogy, like 3 very big wordy books we could probably do, given the amount of research we've amassed. And Kevin's been threatening to do a book on Heep for like 25 years. But we have so much stuff that eventually we just got to get around to do it. But I thought this was a cool project because it's part of this series, and it's literally every single factoid you would want on the band, plus 500 pictures or something like that.
Right on. When did you discover Heep? Did you discover them back in the 70s?
Definitely. I was more or less getting into music in a serious way at, say, 11 years old, so 1973, 74, and definitely Heep was around part of that. See, one of the amazing things about Heep is that around that time, they had just gone through one of these astonishing runs of albums and productivity. I mean, essentially, okay, so to go back a little bit, I include them in the true invention year of heavy metal. I mean, I wrote a whole book called Who Invented Heavy Metal, which is 120,000 words that ends in 1971. So there's a big long prehistory. But 1970, you get at the very beginning of the year the first Black Sabbath album. And in the middle of the year, I think it's June or July, you get Deep Purple in Rock, but you also get another Black Sabbath album in Paranoid. But you also get Uriah Heep's debut album, and this is the US version of it, just called Uriah Heep, but it's called Very Heavy, Very Humble in the UK. And it's got an equally scary cover, and there's the spooky live shot inside. And then this thing, I used to draw this as a kid. I still got a painting of that. But essentially, this came out in 1970. And it's every bit as good and as heavy as those other albums. Maybe not quite as heavy as In Rock, maybe a little lighter than Paranoid, but certainly way heavier than the first Black Sabbath. And it's exquisitely recorded for that time. I mean, I always say that when Heap hit their stride doing that thing, they always got accused of being Deep Purple clones, but they were coming up at the same time. They even rehearsed down the hall from each other. Like they were both in there as London bands doing the thing, but they had a big Hammond organ sound as well with them. And when they recorded that properly and on some of their better songs, Deep Purple couldn't touch them. I think their next album, not their next album, but the 2 albums later, Look at Yourself, is actually a better album than Machine Head. Machine Head, I would say, is the one album where you hit this peak of that Deep Purple alloy of the sound of guitar and that going together. But what I was going to get at was, before I get ahead of myself, so you asked about that time, and so they had an album in 1970. They had Salisbury in 1971. They had Look at Yourself in 1971. They had Demons and Wizards, considered their best by most, in 1972. Magician's Birthday in 1972. A double live album in 1973. And then another, I don't have it here, but another album, Sweet Freedom, in 1973. So these guys had, what is it? I think it's 7 albums in 4 years to kick off. And that's when they had their most biggest fame too. They were, selling out all the hockey, not I don't know about selling out, but playing all the hockey barns around America. And they had Demons and Wizards went gold, Magician's Birthday went gold, the live album went gold, and Sweet Freedom went gold. And they don't have any platinums, so that was their big run there. So yes, right in the mid 70s, Heap was pervasive. They were just everywhere. Everybody knew about them. There were a lot, the label was pretty good at putting out ads in the magazines and stuff. And pretty heavy, doomy band, Rainbow Demon, and they had a hit with The Wizard. So these records, these 2 in particular, I've also said that Uriah Heep during that juncture are kind of the inventors of power metal. One of the bands that are in there kind of semi-creating power metal or progressive metal, because there are long things on there. There's big epic songs. There's a lot of demons and wizards and magicians and stuff like that. Very, very spooky, mystical, cool vocals out of David Byron. You got Sunrise, Spider Woman, Blind Eye, Echoes in the Dark, Tales. So, The Wizard, Traveler in Time, Circle of Hands, Poet's Justice, Paradise the Spell, Rainbow Demon. So you've got these songs that are, along with Black Sabbath, granted, but not so much Deep Purple, are establishing sort of a language of heavy metal. And in their case, being, well before Rush, they're kind of in there doing a mix of progressive rock and heavy metal. But I won't get ahead of myself. We could talk about later. Yeah, so that's the early days of Heap.
Would you say that everything you just showed me now is all like, because Deep Purple, I don't know how you feel about Who Do You Think We Are, but I found it kind of like a step down of what came before. Was Uriah Heep more of a consistent band where they didn't have no dips during all those albums you just showed me?
No, they were less of a consistent band. I mean, Salisbury I don't like at all, but actually after Sweet Freedom, things kind of took not a great turn. There's a lot of debate in Heat camps about those albums, but they kind of get rock and rollsy and bluesy and R&B and mellow and heavy, and you get this mix of albums later. Like, you're right. I mean, Who Do We Think We Are is considered a bit of a dip down, but not like Uriah Heep dips down. I mean, Who Do We Think We Are is still a pretty regularly rocking album, as is Burn. I mean, you can argue that Stormbringer is a dip down, and we can have a debate about Come Taste the Band, but Heap kind of went worse. Their middle period is sort of this range of stuff. Wonderworld, Return to Fantasy. What's another middle one? It's getting a little later. Innocent Victim. You know, they lose David Byron along the way. He doesn't die at this point. He dies later on, essentially from alcoholism. But he was bad with the booze, and he, you know, reportedly had kind of a big ego and was hard to deal with. But one of the greatest vocalists of all time. This is a good one, Fallen Angel. But all along the way, they switch vocalists. They have the likes of John Wetton, the bass player. He sings a little bit, but they've got John Lawton and John Sloman, and then that's when you get to this period here, and so yeah, once you get into so this is sort of the nadir. This is about as bad as it gets. This is one of the worst albums of all time by anybody, even though it's got a great album cover. Didn't even come out in the States. It was just a UK thing. So it kind of went down. To answer your question, and I'll turn it back to you, but I would say they were less consistent than Deep Purple.
They went a little more AOR. I mean, I know they did on Abominog, but the other ones as well, you would say, when they came into the 80s, it got a little more AOR.
Yes, but the 70s stuff is not even AOR. It's just like a worse version, just like all kinds of silly rock and roll stuff, and just they would try everything. A little bit like people's complaints about Nazareth, right? They just would do anything, and that was kind of what happened on those ones. But when you get to these records, like Abominog, I did a Contrarians episode of our channel I have with Marco, and one of our early episodes was I rated this as the greatest Uriah Heep album, and a lot of people love it. And I love it to death. It has sort of sentimental reasons for me as well, but you know, you're right. I mean, they completely changed direction, and it's a whole new band. It's essentially Mick Box, the leader of the band. He's been there all throughout. Guitar. He's the king of the wah-wah pedal. That's one of his big things.
Is he the only original member left?
Now, yeah. But along the way, Lee Kerslake is also in the band here, and he's on the records, many of them moving forward. But Bob Daisley is in here, so this is a bit of that in and out of the Aussie band. John Sinclair on keyboards, Peter Golby on vocals. So Peter Golby comes in. He's only on 3 albums. Where's my equator? I don't know what my equator is, but this is the second one of the trilogy, and then it goes to Equator. But yeah, we did a Contrarians episode where I rated this my favorite Heep album, and although it is, you describe it perfectly. I mean, it is fairly AOR, but it's gritty and it's heavy, and the production is exciting, and it's pretty aggressive and combative at the same time. When they get to this one, it gets even a little more AOR, but there's still. And Peter Golby is an amazing vocalist, but it's still fairly heavy and rocking, and they still have that Deep Purple thing. I mean, that Deep Purple thing's kind of funny because Mick Box, you know, his standard quip when the comparisons to Deep Purple are brought up, and says, "Yeah, the difference is they had 1 singer and we had 5." So this was one of the cool things about Heep. They had these huge vaulted vocal harmonies. All through that era. Some of the best out there. You know, we always think of Sweet and we think of Queen when it comes to that, but Heep definitely had that as well, and one of the consummate amazing lead singers in David Byron. So they had a lot going for them, and like I say, when you go back to you know, this album here, if I could get anybody to listen to anything, Tears in My Eyes and Shadows of Grief, I rate those as probably my 2 favorite Uriah Heep songs of all time, especially Shadows of Grief. And the production on this album, it's amazing. It's a 1971 album. So they're on Bronze. This is Jerry Braun, the leader of the label, or the runner of the label, Bronze Records. Jerry Braun is also producing the album. But you listen to the production on this, and it is absolutely crushing high fidelity. But in that space that Deep Purple is always trying to achieve, but they don't quite get there with In Rock is not a great sounding album. Fireball is not a great sounding album. Who Do We Think We Are is not a great sounding album. In the middle in 72, Machine Head is a great sounding album. This is twice as good sounding, doing the same thing. You just put on Shadows of Grief, and just the drum sound and the massive Hammond organ and the way the vocals are in there. It's just like strapping on like a jet airplane size set of headphones and listening to just this gorgeous sound. And to have that come out in 71 is incredible. They never, Demons and Wizards and Magician's Birthday are good sounding records. Sweet Freedom's even better sounding, but they never got that good sounding again. So it was just a magic moment in time. The album's an absolute masterpiece.
So if you were to recommend one for me, would it be Look at Yourself?
Well, here's the thing. They have, so knowing that you're not exactly buying into the AOR Abominog early 80s part of it, that leaves actually two things. It leaves that classic early period, and yes, I would say Look at Yourself, or possibly Demons and Wizards, which most people think is their greatest album, or the debut with Gypsy. First song on the first album, 1970, that thing is crushingly heavy. An amazing heavy metal classic to come out in 1970. But the other amazing cool thing about Heep is that they go through sort of a period of they're going to lose Peter Golby as vocalist. The Equator album is not that well produced. They do a live album. They're kind of on smaller labels. They have this album called Different World. But then eventually I think there might be another one in there. Anyways, they eventually come back. So at this point, Bernie Shaw is in as vocalist. Now, Bernie Shaw is from Victoria, BC originally, but he was in the UK and he was in the band Grand Prix, kind of a very poppy version of a new wave of British heavy metal band. So he hadn't done much at this point. He joins Uriah Heep. But then what happens is, let me grab my CDs here. They become, we often have this debate of bands that are making some of their best music of their career in the later years, which always surprises people when that happens. And then the list, people debate. Deep Purple is one for me. I always talk about Cheap Trick, Motorhead, King's X is a consistently good band. Clutch. I mean, now we're talking newer bands, but Heart is a good example. Heart has some amazing records later in their career. But you could almost argue that the shining example of the best version of this is Uriah Heep. So they come back with, where's the one they come back with? Here's kind of the start of the amazing blessed run of the Bernie Shaw years. So Bernie Shaw has been their lead vocalist now since I think it's 1987. So many years. What is that? 35 years, 25 years, something like that. But anyways, Sea of Light. So we got Roger Dean in on graphics. I didn't quite finish off that point, but Demons and Wizards and Magician's Birthday are some of his earliest graphics before he gets really codified in that look that he applies to Yes more than anything, right? But anyway, so they get him back. So Sea of Light, Sonic Origami. You've got records like Wake the Sleeper. All of these. There's your Sonic Origami. That was a little mellower. The latest one is 2018's Living the Dream. And I swear, Ralph, like, if depending on your taste in music, but for classic, heavy, but still melodic, but squarely heavy metal, 70s vibe, organic sounding, analog sounding, really good albums. Essentially, Uriah Heep since 1995 has not looked back, and they've made something like 7 or 8 really good studio albums. So, if you're a dyed in the wool, I can't see outside of the 70s. I love 70s music kind of guy. There are 70s classics for you to love. But if you're amenable to old bands, very old bands, doing great music in the new days, but still sounds like their old stuff, Uriah Heep and Deep Purple are the two best examples. I think Deep Purple, through all those Steve Morse years, has made 5 or 6 amazing records too. But Heep is right up there. And live, Ralph, I mean, Bernie Shaw is one of the old vocalists who is doing the best job that you can imagine out of all these guys where you see their voices start croaking like crazy. I mean, I don't know what's going on with this John Bon Jovi thing. That's just bizarre to watch that train wreck, right? But Bernie Shaw is incredible. Mick Box at his age is still all over the stage. They've got a powerhouse drummer in Russell Gilbrook and Davey Rimmer on bass. Phil Lanzon is a long time Heap member, so he's there up on keyboards, and they are just killing it live too. They are just running around like they're 20 years old up there. So yeah, combine those things, amazing records and just peerless live for an old band. And Heap are a force to reckon with.
Yeah, you know, I did see them again. The only two times I've seen them was with Priest, and the last time I saw them was maybe 3 years ago, and they were phenomenal.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I was like, oh man, I really need to get into this band. And I will say I did listen to Look at Yourself because that was recommended to me.
Yeah.
By the drummer of Death Angel. He's a big Uriah Heep fan. And cool. I got to say, that was my favorite of what I've heard so far. But and also what you were touching upon before, like older bands doing new music, I absolutely love everything Purple, everything Purple is done, even Bananas. I love the only thing I'm a little, you know, the covers album, I couldn't really get into much.
That was crap,
Yeah, but everything else with Bob Ezrin and like the song Vincent Price, I would put up as one of my favorite Deep Purple songs overall. So I am very interested to see hear later Uriah Heep as you're describing it. It's kind of like what Deep Purple's doing now, correct?
Yeah, you know what? Literally skip all those new albums I told you about and go right to the newest one, Living the Dream, and it'll blow you away. I mean, it's beautifully done. It's just dense and heavy and rocking and a lot of variety and well recorded. I mean, and then slowly work your way back, but you'll notice that just like Deep Purple with all those Steve Morse albums, they're just writing so maturely, and it's not cheesy. You know, there's just it's not like they're lacking for ideas. They've got this nice mix of young guys and older guys in the band. I guess I would say the rhythm section are the younger guys, you know, but they're probably in their 40s or whatever, that kind of range anyways. But the other guys are, you know, 60s and 70s, right? But yeah, go to Live in the Dream. I saw that exact same tour. I had to go down to Connecticut, and I inducted Heap into the Heavy Metal Hall of Fame from the stage, and we gave them all awards and stuff at that show. So that was Heap supporting Priest, and yeah, they were great. Priest was great that time too. Saw them in that weird casino, Mohegan Sun Casino. You know, a hermetically sealed materialist shrine to neon and junk food, essentially, right? It's so strange, eh? You know, no reason to go outside. You go outside and there's like just pavement and stuff, and you're going, wow, this is like a weird universe that we're trapped in here, right? You know, hotel through the mall of the casino to the venue, which is a big, almost like a hockey barn, right? And then back through the mall to your hotel room. You know, it's really weird. But yeah, that was really cool. So right from the stage, we you know, put them into this Heavy Metal Hall of Fame thing.
That pretty much mirrors the show I saw, because I saw it at the Hollywood Hard Rock Casino, and again, you have to go through a mall. And I thought the pre-set list was a set list for diehards. Do you remember that set? Like, they threw out songs that I've seen them play. You know, Take These Chains, I think was, because the thing is that when I saw it, it was the first leg of that show, the first show, and it was like the first time they ever played Take These Chains. They brought back Killing Machine, and since, you know, do you remember the set list of the Uriah Heep set? Did they throw out any oddities or?
Not quite, but Heap does challenge their audience a fair bit with the new material. Yeah, no, I don't really remember. They have enough hits over the years because they go back way further than Priest even, right? I mean, literally before Priest had an album out, Heap had like 5 albums out. You know, they were over with, but they were semi over with by the time Priest started, right? They had already had their blessed run of all those that prolific run of records. But yeah, so good live, and yeah, I feel like, you know, having interviewed them so many times, I did some liner notes for them, and I wrote some stuff for tour programs, but I would love to eventually put together a proper, you know, typical book of mine, wordy book, right? The word book, with going through every song and every album and the album covers and all that stuff. Great album covers too with this band too, right? They just got such a string of weird album covers. No set logo, but just kind of striking images all the time.
Yeah, those like I've said many times, the Do Let Loose, and now I just recently got the later ones, which I can't put down, Martin. And
Right.
I love the you know how you go through each album, each song, and so you haven't done that for Uriah Heep yet, huh?
No, and like I say, between what I have with my buddy down the highway, you know, we could do 3 books on Heep pretty easily. But wanted to ask you, what are your 3 or 4 least favorite Deep Purple albums?
I didn't like House of Blue Light too much. And you know, when I did say Who Do You Think You Are is a dip, there are some songs on there I absolutely love.
Yeah, I
like
know.
Rat Bat Blue and Sue's Dancer, and let me think. Okay, I know I have seen you praise it. I can't get into Slaves and Masters much.
Right.
That one, and then let me think, because I love Stormbringer. I think their most underrated will be Come Taste the Band. I think that's an amazing album. And one more. I really don't dislike any other one. I think those 2 would be the ones that I didn't really get into, though they both have songs I like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say 2 of them.
Yeah.
I can't think of the third one, because I do love all the Morse albums. Abandon, I think, is very underrated as well.
It's funny. It's almost like, well, it is. You've blocked out of your mind the pre-Gillan years, which are like, to me those are the only Deep Purple albums I don't like. I definitely don't like them at all. Like those, I think there's 3 of them plus the classical album, right?
Yeah.
I don't like any of those at all. But then starting with In Rock, there's none I don't like. I just love that band, right? So,
Yeah, but some more than others, right? I mean, there's
Battle Rages On is a little down, I suppose.
Yeah, I did enjoy that one. I enjoyed the first 3 too. You know, it's a different band. You know, because they became more. It was a situation. Well, you know, more deep. I believe it was like Richie wanted to take a heavier route, and then John Lord said, "Let's do this orchestra thing, and if it doesn't work out, we'll take it to your direction." Richie, wasn't it something like that?
Well, I don't think they were going to stick on being an orchestra band, but I mean, that was just a fun, different thing to do. But you know, they realized that, you know, we are super confusing everybody. But that's where they lose Rod Evans and Nick Simper, and Ian Gillan and Roger Glover come in as this great writing team, and obviously they get a new lead vocalist out of it as well. But the neat thing about In Rock, that I always loved, this quote Roger told me long time ago in my first interview with them. They said, I love this idea. He goes, what we decided with that record was we would only include things that are exciting. If it wasn't exciting, it would be left off the album. So I thought that was kind of cool. And you know, it's hard. I've hammered all those guys over the years to say to like tell me that, to realize that it is such an incredible invention of heavy metal. Out of all of those 4 albums in 1970 that I consider the true invention of heavy metal, where you're putting the blues away and you're moving into classical and doom and all that. Like there's no blues. I always have this argument with people, but I don't think there's a teensy bit of blues on the first Black Sabbath album, but there's no blues on Paranoid. There's no blues really on In Rock. There's no blues on the Heap album. So to me, 1970, that's a new thing that you get, you know, February 13th, Friday the 13th, 1970 with the first Black Sabbath. But, you know, In Rock is probably the heaviest album out of all four of those. So they out heavy Black Sabbath. It's not heavier than Master of Reality, or Volume 4, maybe. But in 1970, I think it's actually heavier than Paranoid. And you know, it does some new things like the Iron Maiden heavy metal gallop on Hard Lovin' Man and stuff like that, right? And it is more classical than Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath's more doom, and you could argue that doom is more heavy metal than classical. But you know, I think you get the first vestiges of a heavy metal guitar hero too, because a heavy metal soloist, a shredder, or a guy with a spotlight on him is a major component of heavy metal. And I think that's really the first time you really get that. You know, arguably Jimi Hendrix is somewhat in that, but certainly not. I don't think Eric Clapton, even though Eric Clapton is God and all that, right? But you know, it certainly wasn't there with MC5 or the Stooges or Blue Cheer. So it's not really there with Tony Iommi. So it's really Ritchie establishes that as well. But so yeah, nailing those guys on realizing that they were inventing heavy metal just goes right over their head. They have no clue what I'm talking about. They just go into, oh, well, we called it heavy rock at that. You know what else we called it? We called it progressive rock. And sometimes, you know, people used to call it acid rock, and they just drift off into this. No, I mean, listen to those riffs. This is a new kind of music you guys are inventing, and they don't get it. It's really weird. They just don't get it.
Yeah, you know, I mean, if you listen to In Rock, it does have more flavors of metal than the first Sabbath, where it's, you know, to me, the first Sabbath, I think the song that really is fast is the end of the song, Black Sabbath, where this one you have Flight of the Rat, you have Speed King, and then you have Into the Fire, which is very doomy. I think, you know, it's like a doom. Almost, you can consider it like a Black Sabbath song. But obviously there was I don't think they heard the first Black Sabbath album while recording In Rock. Would you happen to know?
No, and if they had heard it, I mean, there's a good chance they would have heard it, but I don't think they would have been influenced by it because they were so creative themselves. They were just writing up a storm. They were loving this new lineup. Bloodsucker's probably even the doomiest song on it. But right. You know, my memory or my thought of the first Black Sabbath album is not the fair number of pretty cool heavy metal things that are done on that record. It's listening to Tony solo away over basically a rhythm section with no rhythm guitar behind it. I mean, there's a lot of noodling and jamming on that album, I find. But you know, obviously, Black Sabbath, the song itself, is a super daring new heavy metal. You know, NIB is very, very heavy metal. The Wizard, not so much. The Wizard, you know, you got the harmonica kind of polluting things a little bit. And then, you know, the rest of the album is kind of wigging out there. It's a real hard Vertigo Records album is what it is. Whereas Paranoid, you know, it's a step up. It's a step up to the you know, the between the eyes in your face kind of feel, right?
Yeah, I think they were maybe a little green, and it was kind of rushed, the first album. So,
but you know, you look at this Heap, and you've got Gypsy, Walking in Your Shadow, Bird of Prey. So what they did on this, go listen to the song, Ralph. Go listen to Bird of Prey. That will blow your mind. I mean, it essentially, it wasn't on the UK version called Heavy, Very Heavy, Very Humble, but they switched a couple tracks around and they stuck it on Uriah Heep, Uriah Heep. But you listen to that song. Tell me when you listen to that song if it doesn't sound like the precursor to Dissident Aggressor. Oh. It's that interesting and complicated, and for them to be doing that in 1970 is very commendable, right? Again, for them to be doing that song itself, along with Gypsy, and possibly, I mean, what do we got on side 2? Real Turn On, not so much. But yeah, I would say Walking in Your Shadow, Gypsy, but Bird of Prey is the one to focus on. And if you listen to that song, I think that song is a greater heavy metal masterpiece than anything on the first 2 Black Sabbath albums and In Rock. In fact, oh yeah, I'll go there. I would say in 1970, if we were to rate the quality of the heavy metal songs from 1970, Bird of Prey would be absolutely the top of the list.
Why do you think, Martin, that they did not achieve what Sabbath and Deep Purple achieved in the 70s?
Yeah, good question. They definitely had a lot of drug problems and drink problems. So David Byron was known to be a big drinker. Gary Thane, their bass player, died of a heroin overdose. I think that's 73, 74, something like that. So they lost him. But the other thing is, again, like Nazareth would have been way bigger had they not decided to semi-abandon the heavy metal position, right? So Heap kind of did that along the way. They were pretty consistently heavy through Sweet Freedom, I would say, and then after that, with the Wonder World and High and Mighty, very maligned album of theirs, and Return to Fantasy, they're kind of like all over the board. Again, they're losing David Byron at one point as well, but essentially, they abandoned the hard rock position. Now, Deep Purple obviously had their own rocky problems. Sabbath kind of went through their sales. They stayed a pretty big band, but they were on a slow decline in terms of piercing the veil of the pop culture fabric, as it were, as you get through Bloody Sabbath and Sabotage, and then down into Technical Ecstasy and down again, and then Never Say Die, right? But and obviously Purple broke up. They had all those lineup changes, and they broke up. Fortunately, the first lineup change, they still maintained their popularity, but then that crashed in flames pretty fast. So, I mean, Purple was gone. We lost Purple in the middle in 1975. They were gone, right? 75 into 76, and then we enter the everybody in Purple does jazz fusion for a few years.
Would you credit, as you said earlier, Uriah Heep would be like the beginning of power metal? Wouldn't you say the same thing about Rainbow? Like maybe like okay, like a lot of people say, Sabbath invented heavy metal and Judas Priest perfected it. Would you consider, like, though I can't speak for Uriah Heep because I don't really know, familiar with it, but do you think that, because I listen to stuff like Kill the King and Light in the Black and Stargazer as proto power metal, wouldn't you agree?
Well, you know what? We'll use your analogy there, because this kind of makes sense. And I've never thought about this, but maybe Uriah Heep invented power metal and Rainbow perfected it. Right? Because, Uriah Heep is doing their greatest power metal music in 1970, 71, and 72, really. It's all over by 72. Rainbow doesn't even come around till 75, and they don't perfect power metal until 76. And then the other two important bands, I think, in the roots, the foundation of power metal, have to be Rush and Judas Priest. So maybe the throughput is Uriah Heep, Rush, Priest, Rainbow.
In that order, yeah, because you're talking like maybe Sad Wings.
Yeah, so Rush and Priest have their first album in the same year, 1974. They perfect what they're doing. Rush through Fly By Night, Caress of Steel, 2112. So that takes you from 75. Hang on, 74, 75, yeah, 74 and 75 and 76. And Priest perfects what they're doing in 76 and 77. And Rainbow is being very power metal-y in 76 and 77.
Very, yeah. And one thing I forgot to mention was, here's a very strange connection with the Blizzard of Oz and Uriah Heep. Of course, you know that there's members. I saw Ozzy Osbourne at the Sunrise Musical Theater in '81, where at that time they had Aldridge and Sarzo. Then the following year, I saw Priest with Uriah Heep, where they had Kerslake and Daisley. So essentially, I saw the Blizzard of Oz on the same stage, just a year separated. Isn't that an odd connection?
Funny, yeah. Yeah, myself and my buddy Tim Henderson, you know, who we started Brave Words and Bloody Knuckles with, we used to quip that, you know, we saw, or no, well, this is more me if you put everything together. So I saw Robert Plant solo on the Principle of Moments tour, which was my favorite album of all time for like 20 years. Just love that second Robert Plant album. And then later I saw a Jason Bonham drum clinic. And then later we saw Page Plant together, Tim and I. So it's like, this is the only way we're going to see Led Zeppelin, right? Because neither of us went to O2. So you got to put all the guys together like that.
That's amazing. So, and if you were to recommend me 3 Uriah Heep albums, I mean, I already know you would say the latest one, Look at Yourself, and then if there's one more that's not Magician's Birthday or Abominog, which one would you? The first one?
Yeah, you know what? I would go with the one that literally consistently wins all the polls, and it is the sister album to Magician's Birthday. I mean, I understand you're not a big fan of Magician's Birthday. This is a little heavier and a little doomier and a little darker, so you might like this a little more than Magician's Birthday. So this is the one that came just before it, and again, it's got hang on, does this have the? Yeah, so this it's kind of cool. In the original vinyl, you've got, you know, this very yes-looking shot as well, Roger Deany, but then it's got an extra panel that opens up, and then you get all the lyrics. But so there's your pre-early days Roger Dean type graphics. I mean, you don't get much more power metal than that. You know, calling your album Demons and Wizards and that artwork, right?
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah. Nobody was doing stuff like that. Well, I mean, as far as artwork, probably just Yes, who's not
yeah,
power metal, but.
yeah.
So, and another question is, you touched upon the live album. Now, I'm a huge fan of 70s live albums.
Yeah.
Would you recommend the Uriah Heep live album? Because does that essentially have all the essential songs on it, the set list?
Yes. So this album is highly, highly regarded as a live album, but then way at the other end, it's also notoriously hated for one reason. They do at the end of the album, rock and roll medley. Bands used to do this in the 70s, and it used to drive people nuts. So they've got this song on here called Rock and Roll Medley, where they go through Roll Over Beethoven, Blue Suede Shoes, Mean Woman Blues, Hound Dog, At the Hop, Whole Lot of Shakin' going on, and then back to Blue Suede Shoes. Everybody who's ever heard that, even if you're a massive Heat fan, hates that thing. So that thing's on here. But other than that, it's a well-recorded live album. It's got all sorts of slamming heavy hits on it. Like it opens with Sunrise. That is a really spooky song. Go listen to Sunrise, Ralph.
Actually, isn't that the song that opens Look at Yourself?
Not Look at Yourself. It's hang on. It's on Magician's Birthday. It opens Magician's Birthday.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, you know, I'm looking at the tracks on here, and it's a little bit, I don't like live albums that stretch out too much, and this one kind of does. Side 2 has only 2 songs, July Morning and Tears in My Eyes. July Morning is like one of their big epics. It's a little bit mellow. I'm not that crazy, but it's kind of, July Morning is their Child in Time, put it that way. That's the one that everybody compares to Child in Time. Side 2 is Gypsy and Circle of Hands. Side 4 with that notorious rock and roll medley also has Look at Yourself and Magician's Birthday and Love Machine. Boy, those can't be very long. It's kind of weird because that's Magician's Birthday is a really long song. But yeah, and Easy Livin's their other one. That's the other thing I didn't mention about Heep. They're known for being the kings of the shuffle, the heavy metal shuffle. So they have, you know, a dozen or so fairly iconic songs where Lee Kerslake does a really good shuffle. Kind of like Foghat's known for that a little bit. ZZ Top's known for that. But with Heep, it's more like a doomy classical heavy metal shuffle. But they just like that beat. But yeah, so the other cool thing about Heep Live is it's got in it, where's my... it's got a cool booklet that comes with it. So this is like an insert in it where you've got, you know, pictures of the band. And mine's falling apart, looks like. You know, very much like, what does that remind you of? The inside of Volume 4.
Yeah, and also, do you own Live at Last?
These are just like it, right?
Yeah, Live at Last, the album itself the little sticker on the album it looks just like that picture.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's your lineup of all those records they slammed out so fast leading up to this. There's
So all those albums there you would recommend?
Well, so that's that first run of their most respected albums. The only one I don't like in there, I've always had it in for Salisbury, their second album. Never liked it at all, but love the other four. Yeah. So there you go.
Wow. So you did educate me. I mean, I will go, and I mean, I've been listening to it a lot this past week, knowing that we were going to do this, and I mean, I can't say I dislike it, you know, because it does have all these elements, like, you know, it does, like you were saying, like very Deep Purple-ish at times, and I do like the heavy Hammond organ on a lot of these tracks, but when somebody told me check out Look at Yourself, which I did this morning, I was like, now this is like, I mean, as a first listener, that one grabbed me the most.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard the first one yet, so I got to get.
You know what I love about Look at Yourself, and go check this again. I mean, literally those first opening huge crunching chords of Tears in My Eyes. It goes dun, 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 and then the slide comes in, right? Those opening chords, that might be the best, most high fidelity production ever as of 1971. You just listen to the way that song, and when the drums kick in, the snap of the snare drum, it's just exquisitely recorded. And I swear, for that might be the first best recording of all time across any style of music right at that point. So so you've already listened to Look at Yourself. So assignment wise, since you've done that already, I'm only going to say go run quickly through the latest album and play Bird of Prey. That's it. That's your entire assignment.
Okay. Okay. Well, also, what was the one after?
No, I'm going to give you one more. I got to give you one more because you're a big music guy. They have a track later on in those Wilderness Years albums of the late 70s, Suicidal Man. Go play Suicidal Man. That will blow your mind.
Wow. Okay. Will do. All right. Before I let you go, I wanted. I mean, you will come back, right?
Sure.
Okay, great. Because man, there's so much things, so many bands that I would like to talk to you about, which you did. I mean, one book I really need to get from you, which I'm going to ask you a question now, was I am so fascinated by the mystique and the mystery of Oyster Cult. I mean, I just can't get enough of Oyster Cult, trying to figure out you did a book. Is it that you explain Imaginos, or?
Wow, this is an episode in itself, so I'll just give you the short version. When you get this book, your head will explode when you see that book. So it's called Flaming Telepaths, Imaginos Expanded and Specified. So it's it's kind of like an occult book more than anything. It goes through all of alchemy and the occult and Aleister Crowley, and I actually did 39 illustrations that are in the book. And there's a lot of Austin Osman Spare. You know, Imaginos is ostensibly the story of what caused World War I, the occult causes of World War I. Sandy didn't leave a lot behind. I mean, he left a few notes and like those dozen or 15 lyrics that apply to the story. So it's an extrapolation beyond that, but just building off the occult history of World War I, or the occult history of the cause of World War I. It takes a very crazy flight of fancy. It's on kind of like nice stock, so my illustrations look really cool. And there's an offer in the back, like I made prints of the illustrations and I'm selling those. And yeah, that one will completely blow your mind. But everything anybody's kind of ever said about what the story of Imaginos is explained in there, with a lot of new extra weird stuff around it. Albert really liked it. He thought it was cool. He used a couple of illustrations in some of his videos for his new Imaginos thing. And I've sent them a copy because they wanted to go through it in terms of, maybe pick up some ideas for the, they're doing like a comic book version of Imaginos, I believe. So, yeah, it's a crazy, crazy book.
Was that a tough one to write?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm thinking of doing a second one. The problem with the second one is you don't want it to. I've worked my way around this. Like, there's some fascinating storylines that I would do with the second one, which would pick up at the end of World War I and go forward to the modern day. But unfortunately, a lot of that story is supposed to be about Hitler and World War II. But I've found ways to get around that and not make it all about, Hitler. But there, the second one would include a lot of the invention of the atomic bomb, Aleister Crowley's later in life, Austin Osman Spare's later in life, UFOs, conspiracy theories, Kennedy getting assassinated. That would be a lot of part of it. Biker gangs. So there would be a lot of cool stuff in the second one, but it's a big project because I would want to do 39 more illustrations for it, right? So I would like to do that at some point. It sold well. I had to do reprints once or twice of it. It's still one that people pick up. People just love Blue Oyster Cult and love that Imagino story, like you say.
Yeah, it's just the whole vibe. I mean, and all the UFO, like Black Blade, and it just I find them so fascinating. And right before I let you go, I just want to ask one more question about Blue Oyster Cult. Do you feel? I mean, I believe their biggest selling studio album is Agents of Fortune, and mainly because I think it has a song I will never be burnt out on. Don't Fear the Reaper. I absolutely love that song. But do you feel, since it was their biggest selling album, I know that you're not a fan of the black and white period, but you did like Agents of Fortune, because I feel that's very disjointed album to me.
Yeah, it is. It would be my least favorite of that run that I love so much. I even the black and white period I like, and I like the later stuff a lot too. But that run from Agents all the way up to, say, Fire of Unknown Origin, more so. It would be my least favorite of those, because you're right. It is disjointed. It's murky. It's got a weird production. It's kind of like muffled production. There's not a lot of bottom end on the drums. Blue Oyster Cult generally didn't have very good productions, right? But that one's one of the worst ones that way. But, it does have Tattoo Vampire on it. And it's got This Ain't the Summer of Love. It's got some real bangers.
I love Tenderloin on that one.
Yeah. Well, now you're getting into the more obscure ones, and Morning Final and stuff like that. But yeah, when I think about it now come to think about it, I think the biggest problem with it really is the production. I think if that was a beautifully produced album, we would both love it more.
Yeah, and I think they would be much bigger too, I think, because I think a lot of people bought that album because of Don't Fear the Reaper. And I think for a casual listener, it would not like us. We really dive into Blue Oyster Cult. But if they would, let's say if they had like Godzilla and, more accessible songs like Don't Fear the Reaper, I think Blue Oyster Cult would be a huge, huge act now, where people would dwell into. My favorite is Cultosaurus, because I find that one to be the most strangest, but the most, I still don't get it, but I love that because I don't get it. All of a sudden, like in the middle of Monsters, it sounds like like a little lounge, a little John's lounge, and it takes these twists and turns, and the last song, Unknown Tongue, is just so good. And I just think they're criminally underrated, and I think it's because it goes over too many people's head. But
that's exactly it. It goes over too many people's heads. It's too literary. They want to try too many different things. They're not pandering to a straight commercial audience. So, when those guys complain about their sales and how good they did, I'm like, almost like, you guys did amazing for the kind of music you were. You actually sold a lot of records and a lot of tickets for what you were. So don't complain.
Oh yeah, I saw them headline with Hart baseball stadium, which oddly enough was the very first Motorhead show in America. It was at the Miami baseball stadium. When I met Lemmy, I said, Lemmy, I saw your first show in America at the Miami baseball stadium. And he was like, no, I was here with Hawkwind. I was like, oh man, did I feel dumb then,
Yeah,
but Martin, again, it was an honor, man. I look forward to, hopefully next time we will dive into these right here.
Sure.
I would love to talk more about Sabbath and and I feel like we'll educate each other on that one, because I know my Sabbath, and thanks to you, I know my Sabbath even more, because all the minute details of what went into everything. And I based the whole documentary. I did a visual documentary where it's really based on Doom Let Loose. I don't really rip you off on it, but I get a lot of your information for it. And I thank you, and I've been a big fan of your books for many years, and so has a lot of people. And I don't know if you ventured into the comments from the last time you were here, but it was unanimous. Everybody's like, you need to have Martin on more. Yeah, they really enjoyed the show.
Yeah, that was cool. I did see that. That was really neat to see. So yeah.
So before you go, a mistake I made the last time you were here. I forgot to let you plug your stuff. I forgot to do that last time.
Oh, well, I guess all the books you could get at martinpopoff.com.
Which I will leave a link below.
Okay, yeah. I sign them and ship them out. There's PayPal buttons there for, Canada, US, international. We've got our YouTube channel, The Contrarians, and then I have an audio podcast called History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff. Haven't missed a week. I'm up to 147 episodes of that.
Right on. And yes, I want to show everybody. He did sign mine, and I really like what you wrote here. You said, to Ralph, a smarter metalhead than me. Now I would disagree with that, but then just the fact that you think I'm smarter than you makes me think that maybe you're not too bright there, Martin.
Exactly. I am a fraud. I'm a complete fraud.
No, everybody loves, and I got to say, one of my favorite, you have a way with words. You're like a wordsmith. And one of my favorite things you ever said was when you were describing some of the new wave of British heavy metal albums, you described it as poverty production. I just love that.
Yeah.
I love that so much. Anyway, Martin, till the next time, I thank you so much for being part of the Almost Human channel. And everybody, down below is a link where you can get the Uriah Heep book, and the Dio book, and the Merciful Fate book's really, really good. And again, thank you so much, Martin.
Cool. All right. See you again next time.
I look forward to the next time.
All right. Bye now.
All right. Take care, Martin. Bye-bye.